focuses on the associative property. And in general, the associative property talks about how we can associate, right? The word's right in there, associate, or group numbers. So if I have a number A times B times C, I could do A times B first and then multiply it by C. Or I could do B times C first and then multiply that by A. In other words, I can group them however I want. So for example, these problems here have a lot in common. Let's look at what that is. So if I start with 12 by 8, well, that's 96, right? Let's just start with that assumption. And then we have 6 by 16. Well, 12 by 8, right? We can think of that as 12 as being 6 times 2 times 8. This is the same problem because 6 times 2 is 12. Well, couldn't I do 6 times and then 2 times 8 first? That's the associative property. I can group these two numbers first. And what's 2 by 8? Well, that's 16. And then we get this new problem, 6 by 16. So within a couple of steps, we haven't changed anything. We went from 12 by 8 to 6 by 16, and that's still got to be 96. And we can keep going with this. 16 is just like 4 times 4. Same thing, right? And here we're grouping 4 by 4 first as 16, multiplying that by 6. Well, couldn't I group them this way? 6 times 4 is 24, and that times 4. Well, we haven't changed anything yet, so this has to still be the same answer, or 96. And then we have 8 by 12. Well, how could we rethink 24? Well, 24 can be thought of as 8 times 3. And that times 4, right? This is the same problem. What if I group 3 by 4 first? 8 times 3 times 4. Well, 3 times 4 is 12, so now we get 8 by 12. And it's still the same thing. And look, I mean, that returns us right back to the original problem, which is 12 by 8. Oops, 12 by 8. 12 by 8 and 8 by 12 are the same exact product. Now, that helps us with this right here because we can think about 8 times a fifth times 60 by grouping them in ways that help us. Now, 8 times a fifth is not very helpful, but what if I were to group 1/5 and 60 first? Is that easy to deal with? And I think the answer is yes. 1/5 times 60 means find the number that goes into 65 times. In other words, take 60 and find 1/5 of it. Split it into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces. Right? Split that number up. So divide it by 5, and that gives you 1/5. And when we divide 60 by 5, what do we get? We get 12. Right? So 12 is equal to 1/5 of 60. And then really what we have is 8 times 12. And isn't that what we had right here? So that's also just the same answer of 96. So notice that there might be friendly ways to group these fractions when multiplying that really lead us to a simple answer, right? And this problem is a little less obvious, but 0.8. Well, can we think of 120 as 10 times 12, right? 12 tens. And then now this is a little bit easier to deal with because we can think of 10 times 0.8. If I have 10 0.8s, you might know this trick, that really just becomes 8. And all that's saying is this becomes 10 times greater. We move the decimal point from here to here. Instead of having 0.8, we have 8.0. That's something I go over in other videos, but that's pretty easy to deal with, right? 10 8/10ths, which is 8, and then that by 12. And then isn't that cool? We still get the same exact thing of 96. So all these problems are the exact same because I recognize this one again as 8 by 12. So although this problem 0.8 times 120 might not look at first glance as if it's the same as everything here, by grouping this number or splitting it apart, we can see that it does connect to other problems. So don't be afraid to break numbers apart or regroup them when you're just multiplying. There's a lot of flexibility there.